Welcome to Foresight Elements, where we explore, in this part, ancient imagination, image maker. The unity of our self-conscious experience may well be an interformation of hidden interior psychological field processes within an experience of true wholeness. But a man cannot just say these things, says the scientist. You have to show your statistical models for experimental replication is validation. Well, not really. In certain respect, this is true. While this may be a good rule of thumb for matter things, material things, physical things, things unseen are simply to be measured in a different way. It is from within that the tension between the seen and the unseen that new knowledge unfolds. It's through the inner portal of the unseen that our world advances and unfolds. But tension is complex and is not restricted only to our world of appearances. Indeed, the mystical, as we've seen in some of our other videos, is often invoked when mathematicians or physicists fail, where their mathematics fail. And they do fail, and often. There is the failure to replicate from publications, public articles in esteemed journals is referred to as a crisis by some. Here are some links in the description to Cornell University and other links you can follow that will highlight this problem. Unseen imagination is the forming fountain of the manifest universe. Unseen imagination. This manifest world is undergirth or underwritten by a vast unseen internal fields of resonance and the wholeness of their instant formation. Man contains all formations within himself simultaneously. This might feel to you like a fleeting statement, but this is a very ancient idea which we are going to explore. This view, scientists as it appears, modern scientists, finds hard to accept when it comes to our bodies and brains, despite the 110-year-long validation of field and formation in quantum field theory. In this video, we continue our investigation following our orientation of the history in part 4a of the ancient fountain, the principle of the lost psychology of our imagination or fantasy. The question we asked there was who is the Pumander? Here is a summary, just to refresh our memories. Thoth, that is Hermes, divine intellect or mind, as the personification, that is to say, the thought manifestation or outformation, reflection of the mind of God, and as the all-pervading and governing and directing power of heaven and earth, forms a feature of the ancient Egyptian religion, which is as sublime as the belief in the resurrection of the dead in a spiritual body, and as the doctrine of an everlasting life. Thoth is then the Logos of God, who in his relation to mankind becomes the supreme master of wisdom. Before we go forward with this presentation, I think an orientation is appropriate. There are many experts, people with far more knowledge than I have in this particular field. So in this series on the lost psychology of imagination, we have already looked in part 3 at 6 views. And this 2-part view, part 4, A, B, and there's going to be a C part, on the lost psychology of the imagination, is by no means exhaustive. These 2-part series of hermetics works whose history falls within Greek and pre-Hellenistic, Hellas is Greek word for Greek, pre-Hellenistic Gnosticism around 300 to 400 BC, and more ancient works of Hermes, is a continuation of our particular investigation into the creative forming imagination, particularly important for the lost psychology of its understanding. Hence, our aim here is not a full treatment of Trismegistic ideas. In the first place, there are people more knowledgeable than we are, but our aim is merely to indicate its ancient connection with imagination and its percolation through time from these depths. So as far as the fantasy is concerned, this is we will draw from these works certain lines and only from a few books for this presentation. For these, we use the 1650 translation of John Everhard of the Pymander, who uses the Latin version of Ficino in 1443 AD, and we use the translation of GRS Meade, a scholar and a mystic of 1937 AD, roughly, who has invaluable commentaries on Trismegistic, Platonic, Gnostic, and Vedantic, and more ancient Egyptian literature, as we have seen in the history in part 3. So we begin our presentation on forming imagination with book 5, entitled Though Unmanifest, God is Most Manifest, where Hermes instructs his son Tot, the second epoch in our video on the history. We use the first 2 lines of the translation of GRS Meade because these lines contain the kernel of our investigation of the world of appearances. He says, I will recount for thee this sermon, Logos, O Tot. Tot is the young Hermes that is getting an instruction, that thou mayest cease to be without the mysteries of the God beyond all name, and mark thou well how that which to the many seems unmanifest will grow most manifest to thee. Now were it manifest, it would not be, for all that is made manifest is subject to becoming, for it hath been made manifest. But the unmanifest forever is, for it doth not desire to be made manifest. It ever is, and maketh manifest all other things, being himself unmanifest, as ever being and ever making manifest, himself is not made manifest. God is not made himself by thinking manifest. He thinketh, tongue twister, he thinketh all things manifest. Now thinking manifest deals with things made alone, for thinking manifest is nothing else than making. He then alone who is not made, it is clear, is both beyond all power of thinking, manifest, and is unmanifest. And as he thinketh all things manifest, he manifests through all things, and in all, and most of all, in whatsoever things he wills to manifest. Do thou then, Tut, my son, pray first unto our Lord and Father, the one and only One, from whom the One doth come, to show his mercy unto thee, in order that thou mayest have the power to catch a thought of this so mighty God, one single beam of him to shine into thy thinking, for thought alone sees the unmanifest. For thought alone sees the unmanifest, in that it is itself unmanifest. If then thou hast the power, he will, Tut, manifest to thy mind's eyes. Notice the subtlety. The Lord begrudges not himself to anything, but manifests himself through the whole world. Thou hast the power of taking thought, of seeing it and grasping it in thy own hands, and gazing face to face upon God's image. But if what is within thee even is unmanifest to thee, how then shall he himself who is within thyself be manifest for thee by means of outer eyes? We make these observations. The Greek word that is used in these lines for manifest means, I'm not professing to be able to pronounce that, it means imagination or fantasia or maya in Greek, spelled with an I, and is always used in the context of world appearances. Meade here uses the term thinking manifest in its equivalent meaning to the meaning of the fantasy of Tolkien of Lord of the Rings, and he uses it as a term to describe the meaning of this word, which bears the meaning of non-being with reference to the higher logos itself. We emphasize these definitions because they are generally distorted. The doctrine of imagination is the same as that of the Vedanta philosophy, the Maya of the Vedanta Vardhans. Maya, spelled with a Y, is generally translated as illusion. But, says he, this is not a good equivalent, for it comes from the root ma, to make or to measure. The logos is called in Vedanta Mayan, masculine boundary, the maker, measurer, or creator, and his power or Shakti is Maya, feminine, infinite power. Shakti is the power of the divine thought, and the same meaning is retained in late Platonic thought. And so far from being an illusion in any ordinary sense of the word, is very real for us, and is only non-real as compared to the Logos himself, the one reality in the highest philosophical sense of the term. In the next place, we will present extracts from 2 books of the Pemander. There are 17 books altogether that, in our opinion, captures most wonderfully the psychology of the inner cosmological creation of imagination. We are going to use the translations of John Everhard for this. His translation of the 10th book, of his 10th book, there are different arrangements by different philosophers of this work. The Mind to Hermes. Now, this work should be read in conjunction with what is this book should be read in conjunction with the next book, because they are a unity. A teaching of things eternal and of eternity. The Mind to Hermes. Forbear thy speech, O Hermes Trismegistus, and call to mind to those things that are said. But I will not delay to speak what comes into my mind. See then, since many men have spoken many things, indeed, and those very different concerning the universe and the good, but I have not learned the truth. Therefore, the Lord make it plain to me in this point, for I will believe thee only for the manifestation of these things. Then said the Mind how the case stands. God and all. God, eternity, the world, time, generation. God made eternity. Eternity made the world. The world made time, and time generation. Of God, as it were the substance, is the good, the fair, the beautiful, blessedness, wisdom. Of eternity, identity or selfness, being. Of the world, order. Of time, change. Of generation, life and death. But the operation of God is mind and soul. Of eternity, permanence, or long-lasting and immortality. Of the world, restitution and decay or destruction. Of time, augmentation and diminution. And of generation, qualities, difference and distinction. Therefore, eternity is in God, the world in eternity, time in the world, and generation in time. And eternity standeth about God. The world is moved in eternity. Time is determined in the world. Generation is done in time. Genesis. Therefore the spring and fountain of all things is God. The substance, eternity. The matter is the world. The power of God is eternity, and the work of eternity is the world, not yet made, and yet ever made by eternity. Therefore shall nothing be at any time destroyed, for eternity is incorruptible. Neither can anything perish or be destroyed in the world being contained and embraced by eternity. But what is the wisdom of God? Even the good and the fair, the beautiful and blessedness and every virtue and eternity. Eternity therefore put into the matter immortality and everlastingness. For the generation that depends upon eternity, even as eternity doth of God. For generation and time in heaven and earth are of a double nature. In heaven they are unchangeable and incorruptible, but on earth they are changeable and corruptible, opposites. And the soul of eternity is God, and the soul of the world, eternity, and of the earth, heaven. God is in the mind in the soul in the matter, all things by eternity. All this universal body, in which are all bodies, is full of soul, the soul full of mind, and the mind full of God. For within he fills them, and without he contains them, quickening the universe. Without, he quickens the perfect living thing, the world, and within he quickens all living creatures. This is the end of our selection. There is a link in the show more below. Now, this is for this book 4 of GRS Meade, which is called The Cup, or Monas. The cup is there is the cup is a term that means many things. It also the crater, which is a very a primary concept in Plato, or the vortex, literally a whirlpool described by Orpheus. So monas means monad or unity or one. And this book must be read in the context of the previous. Hermes, with reason, logos, not with hands, did the world maker make the universal world, so that thou shouldst think of him as everywhere and ever being, the author of all things, and one and only, who by his will all beings hath created. His body of him is a thing no man can touch or see or measure, a body inextensible, like to no other frame. 'Tis neither fire nor water, nor air nor breath, yet all of them come from it. Now being good, he willed to consecrate this body to himself alone, and set its earth in order and adorn it. So down to earth he sent the cosmos of this frame divine. Man, a life that cannot die, and yet a life that dies. And over all other lives, and over cosmos, the universe too, did man excel by reason of the reason, logos, and the mind. This refers to the first epoch of our history. For contemplator of God's work that man become, he marveled and did strive to know the author. Reason, indeed, O Tat, the young Hermes, among all men hath he distributed, but mind not yet. Not that he grudgeth any, for grudging cometh not from him, but hath its place below, within the souls of men who have no mind. Tat, when did God, O Father, not on all bestow a share of mind? He willed, my son, that to have it set up in the midst, in the middle, for souls, just as it were a prize. And where hath he set it up? He filled a mighty cup with it, and sent it down, joining a herald, a proclaimer, to it, to whom he gave command to make his proclamation to the hearts of men. Baptize thyself with this cup's baptism. What heart can do so? Thou that hast faith, thou canst ascend to him that hath sent down the cup. Thou that dost know for what thou didst come into being. As many then as understood by the herald's tidings, and doused themselves in mind, the same as the cup, became partakers of nous, the knowledge, and when they had received the mind, they were made perfect men. Pre-Atlantis. But they who do not understand the tidings, these, since they possess the aid of reason only and not mind, are ignorant wherefore they have come into being, and whereby. The senses of such men are like irrational creatures, and as their whole makeup is in their feelings and their impulses, they fail in all appreciation. Literally, they do not wonder at those things which really are worth contemplation, the good, the beautiful, and the blessed. These center all their thought upon the pleasures of the body and its appetites, in the belief that for its sake man hath come into being. But they who received this, some portion of God's gift, these taught, if we judge by their deeds, have from death's bonds won their release, for they embrace in their own mind all things, things on the earth, things in the heaven, and things above the heaven, if there be aught, far from where we are today. And having raised themselves so far, they sight the good, and having sighted it, they took upon their sojourn here as mischance, and in disdain of all, both things in body and the bodiless, they speed their way unto the one and only one. This is, O Tat, the gnosis, the knowledge of the mind, vision of things divine. God knowledge is it, for the cup is God's. Tat, Father, I too would be baptized. Hermes, unless thou first shall hate thy body, son, thou canst not love thyself. But if thou lovest thyself, thou shalt have mind, and having mind, thou shalt share in the gnosis, knowledge. Father, what dost thou mean? It is not possible, my son, to give thyself to both. I mean to things that perish and to things divine. For seeing that existing things are twain, body and bodiless, in which the perishing and the divine are understood, the man who hath the will to choose is left the choice of one or the other. For it can never be that twain should meet. In those souls to whom the choice is left, the waning of the one causes the growth of the other to show itself. Now the choosing of the better not only provides a lot most fair for him who makes the choice, seeing it makes the man a god, but also shows his piety to God, whereas the choosing of the worse, although it doth destroy the man, it doth only disturb God's harmony to this extent, that as processions pass by in the middle of the way without being able to anything but take the road from others, so do such men move in procession in their forward rolling through the world led by their body's pleasures. This being so taught, what comes from God hath been and will be ours, but that which is dependent on ourselves, let this press onward and have no delay. For it is not God, it is we who are the cause of evil things, preferring them to good. Thou seest, son, how many are the subtle bodies through which we have to pass, how many are the choirs of demons, angels, how vast the system of the star courses through which our path doth lie, to hasten to the one and only God. For to the good there is no better shore. It hath no bounds, it is without an end, and it is for itself it is without beginning too, though unto us it seemed to have one, the gnosis, knowledge. Here we go to the end of this book. Line 132, for it is the greatest evil not to know God, but to be able to know and to will and to hope is the straight way, and divine way proper to the good, and it will everywhere meet thee, and everywhere be seen of thee. Plain and easy, when thou dost not expect to look for it, it will meet thee waking, sleeping, sailing, travelling, by night, by day, when thou speakest, when thou keepest silence. For there is nothing which is not the image of God. And yet thou sayest, God is invisible. But be advised, for who is more manifest than he? Who is your brother? For therefore hath he made all things, that thou by all things mayest see him. This is the good of God. This is the virtue to appear and to be seen in all things. There is nothing invisible, no, not of those things that are incorporeal. The mind is seen in understanding. God is seen in doing and making. Let these things thus far forth be made manifest unto thee, O Trismegistus. Understand in like manner all other things by thyself, and thou shalt not be deceived. That's the end of our two extracts. We emphasize these are extracts. There is more in the body of these works, but we have chosen these because we've selected them because in our estimation they are closely aligned with our inquiry into the forming imagination. So for the viewers who might be interested in these futuristic subjects, since they have not been investigated at all over the last 400 years, there are some links to follow for your studies. Now, the meaning of the mingling bowl or the cup, the vortex or the crater, this is the preceding was the introduction to formation. The meaning of the cup is very significant in the formation of the spiritual formation of the world. It's struck me as a very interesting idea when I first came across it. I'm just putting my picture there because otherwise we are not going to be able to see. So the cup or bowl has mythological meaning, and the meaning is in the main perspectives we get from Orpheus, particularly from the work of Homer, of which Plato says those that are young shouldn't have a fast-moving opinion on these things. There are these links downstairs, and we are using the commentaries and views of the people there. So the whirlpool or crater, the psychological nature of this whirlpool, cup or golden bowl of Orpheus, has a twofold unity, a primary relation in all hidden relations of the subtle worlds of formation. The father-mother, where the father is the intellectual boundary of formation, and the mother, the pure power and intellect of formation. This principle of formation and its whirring or spinning processes of formation has the connected relation of a group of 4 aspects. The first of this group is a higher monad, a higher leader, a simplicity or a union that sits in like a pyramid in our 9 little videos on Einstein. I think in video 8 or 9. We explain how this triangle works. So the monad is a higher unity or state of being, which is the leader, like in the example of the mythological figures of Kronos or Saturn, who contains all the essences of forms without division in himself. Then there is the sun, the secondary principle, like Zeus or Jupiter, which is the son of Saturn. Or from another perspective, Christ, viewed as world-forming principle, a paternal father, who contains the psycho-intellectual separation, progression, or unfolding differences of the latent forms of the higher order principle. The third aspect of the vortex or the whirlwind is power, purity, the feminine series of Hermes, infinity. The middle between the higher monad and the extremity of projection formation, the fourth from the monad, the end. So the fourth is the outcome of the vortex, is at its beginning is situated in the monad, and then the three principles who mingles souls and elements in a hidden world that's hidden away from our perception. The vast abundance of images thus made in the vortex, through the vortex, and who circumscribes matter, may be seen as the field forms contained in the outformation of the fourth thinking manifest, which is the downward extremity of the evolution of the totality of the interior spiritual processes of the whirlpool or cup. The cup or body is within itself a wholeness or unity. This extremity or field of awareness or plane contains a difference with reference to the higher order monad, simplicity, and is the formation of the abundant world images generated or outformed and circumscribed by the imagination. This fourth, or the end, the last of the tetrad, becomes in its turn the principle of the next downward forming evolution of imagination, which isn't linear. This is the third order of wholeness, which is the final cause of Proclus. For Plato holds that there are many orders in between our world of matter and the good. There is in this psychology the massive circles of the unproceeding, the proceeding, and the progressing to the exterior or the end of the tetrad. And there is a returning to the beginning. So this is like a circle, a circle that has a monad, a unity as its principle, and at its end it has the formation of an image. But the image also has a return to its beginning. So it's much like the parable of the prodigal son, which is the sacred circle of the soul, or the father abiding, the son-daughter leaving, and the son-daughter return. The analogy is the same. The return process is through the similar, because the dividing process is through division and difference. The return process is through the similar, because at the summit is the unity, which is the striving the point of intellectual striving, the good. The cup or crater is the means of inward returning and outward progressing, formation of divine imagination. There are many orders of difference or states of being, imagination, informing and outforming, cups, bowls, craters. These are all different mythological terms that I come across that all mean the same thing. They are well springs, fountains, or principalities of formation, and possess the psychological structure of the unity of bound, the Father, power, the Mother, and intellect, the Maker. Hence Proclus in 450 AD says, the demiurge Zeus, or Jupiter, moves the world according to bounded harmonics. The paternal boundary of harmonics. And he is indeed a supplier of intellectual motion, sound, and of a life which is evolved according to time. In our piece, we just quoted from Meade's work and Everhard's work. A life which is evolved according to time and which effects a mutation, that is to say, not a genetic mutation, but mutation here is a distinction or difference in time, always according to the boundary of the same and similar, the monad, and about the same things, form or image. Thus even difference and opposition possesses a higher boundary of unity. Father still, Zeus or Jupiter is Father, Mother, unity of soul and of all the genera of beings in soul, of the divisions, separations, in it and all the harmonic reasons, the causes, logos, it contains, in constituting it in the world as a self-moved, immortal lyre, a 3 or a 4-string ancient instrument. Again, here we have the idea of tension between opposites, difference and same. We'll come to that at a later time. We have field resonance and harmonics, and he also is the divider of the one and the 7 circles in it, and in short is the maker and fabricator of figure, image, or morphe. For morphe is Greek for form. Zeus or Jupiter is not the soul itself, only begotten among beings, but subsists in conjunction with the vivific, the illuminating cause, Mother Rhea, together with whom he constitutes the second genera of being, mingling them in the crater or bowl in order to the generation of souls. These beautiful images are from the James Webb telescope, can be found on NASA website. For things which intelligible animal, that is to say, the only begotten world soul, is effective and at the same time generative of these, Jupiter is the cause in a divided manner, in conjunction with the crater, who is, in this particular crater, is called Juno, the daughter of Rhea, who is married to Jupiter. Hence, only begotten world soul is exempt from the demiurgus and is intelligible unity or simplicity, the tip of our triangle. I will put links in the description to all these quotes. Proclus, the vivific deity, that is to say, Rhea, the Divine Mother, that vivifies all life, establishes in the middle of the intellectual kings. That is, the imagination established in the middle of the intellectual kings. Because the world, as we've just heard from Hermes, is replete with mind. So in the middle of the kings, the fountains, Saturn or Kronos, she establishes the prolific simplicity, monas, cup of formation, divine natures according to her highest, most intellectual and all-perfect powers. Hence, the first crater or cup of Juno, a masculine and feminine whirlpool, a field resonance around an axis, constitute the first effective projection, formation of the prolific abundance of soul. Thus Juno, the daughter of Rhea, the first crater or cup, is indeed essentially vivific, living, illuminating, mingling all the elements of souls, since souls also are certain lives. Soul and life are inseparable. These are all things that are a great perplexion to our mechanics today. Now Plutarch in GRS Meade says this about the same ideas we've been talking about. For Isis, which is Mother Night, she's the grandmother of Rhea. Grandmother in inverted commas, because the mother is undivided. She is not participating of any divisions. For Isis, this is the Egyptian deity. Same as Mother Night, is the feminine principle of nature, and that which is capable of receiving the whole of Genesis or generation, in virtue of which she has been called nurse, and all receiving by Plato and by the multitude, she of 10,000 names, through her being transformed by reason, logos, and receiving all forms and ideas, images, morphe, and she hath an innate love of the first and most holy of all things, which is identical with the good, the Father, and longs after and pursues it, our imagination. But she flees from and repels the domain of the bad, and though she is the field and matter of them both, yet doth she ever incline to the better of herself, and offers herself for him, the good, to beget and sow into herself emanations, that is to say, imagination or projection, and likenesses, reflections, with which she joys and delights, that she is pregnant with and abundantly big with their generations, that is to say, with vivifying images. For generation is an image of essence in matter and becoming a copy. A better translation to me is a reflection or appearance or image of being. That's what Plutarch has to say in 119 AD. Meade says this concerning the vortex. He has some very interesting ideas. While I get my picture out of amongst the stars over there. Thank you. And Meade concerning the vortex or the crater in Plato, he says, whence come this idea of the crater or cup into our Trismegistic literature? He says, people will, most scholars will undoubtedly say it's from Plato. But we've just seen in the whole of the series that this is a more ancient idea. The crater was a cup in which the Creator mixed the elements of the world soul. For we read in Timaeus that 41d, where Plato is treating of formation of souls, he says, "Thus spake he, Zeus, or Jupiter, and once again into the cup, the crater in Proclus, which he had used in blending and mingling the soul of the universe, he poured the remains of the elements he had employed and mingled in the same manner. They were not, however, pure as before, but in the second and third degree." The end of the spiritual process of downward devolution, of difference, is a circumscription of matter. Meade says this of Orpheus. He said he has to call ether. Ether is close to the close ether and chaos. We need to be very careful with the interpretation of this word chaos and the feminine, because the feminine deity contains all the ideas and forms of the Father, and she's undivided and indefinite. But ether and chaos are the closest deities to the good. So Orpheus calls ether a mighty whirlpool, vortex. This forms the egg or womb of the cosmos. It is a modification of chaos or Rhea, the eternally flowing, the mother of the gods, the great container. Caution with this word too. It should mean imagination, receiving, assimilating, forming. Meade says, thus Proclus, in speaking of Rhea, the Divine Mother, says, the last infinity by which also matter is circumscribed is the container, the imagination, the field, and the plane of ideas. But here is neither limit, nor foundation, nor seat, but excessive darkness. We'll come back to the meaning of these things at a later time. All these links will be in the description. He observes, if these indications before us, we might venture to generalize, we might say that, according to Orpheus, Pythagorean, Platonic, and Hermetic ideas, the matter circumscribed of every plane was thought of as proceeding from such a crater or cup, from within to without, and the elements thereof as being returned from without to within into such a cup or center or receptacle, that is, from a more subtle, simpler, and inner phase, monads, simplicity, to a more gross, complex, and outer material phase, and vice versa. In other words, says he, the crater is the monadic or atomic state of the matter of any given phase or state of existence. With all these things before us, what can we say of our imagination? If we now may observe this most distant vision about thinking manifest, or imagination outforming, in similar to the way as we view the atom of Democritus today as a continuation of our modern wave ideas and quantum mechanics, or say similar to the gravity of Kanada, the Indian philosopher of 600 BC, or Aristotle, 395 BC. If we view these as an attractive force, and if we take the analogies and their percolation to our time, then we might have this following perspective. we may be careful to observe that states of existence are states of imagination and appearances, circumscribed complexities within the simplicity of being, life, and intellect, soul and resonance in ever formation, hidden variables, interconnected processes that intellect, soul or mind, spirit and matter, the last circumscription in every progressing resonant field form, possesses subtle resonances unseen, was a great discovery for me in these Hermetic works. I didn't expect to see those things here. The unmanifest and the living beauty of imagination, always forming, should be the focus within our investigation of all world operations. Would it not now be prudent to say that the whole of the underlying field of our imagination or fantasia appear indeed to be the psychological interforming connection with the whole of ourselves and the universe, including the unseen, the subtle, which is, or the tacit in David Bohm, which is the source of our interrelation and evolution of knowledge within wholeness, for this is field-based. Divine imagination, who forms the wholeness of the world within herself and who forms ourselves, indicates to us an at-once formation of the scene. We, the participants, a microcosm, a certain reflection or image who possesses the hidden processes of formation of all operations within our imagination, of through wholeness, a continuity of many subtle dimensions simultaneously. Our own forming imagination is a subtle, underlying resonant field of contact, and possesses its ancient principle or wellspring, not in time. The fantasy, the interconnecting psychological movement of the instantaneous formation of our own seeing, perception, the center of our experience within and of the universe, is through internal and external contact and its instant formation. There is no flaws or breaks in our perception. Hence, imagination, the forming word, logos, who forms all of us, the fountain who births within herself new forms and new times, new ideas, the sound of ancient lyre, the inner language of image formation. We should not be too surprised to see an analogy, according to Summit, within our own projective world experience. We observe Rupert Sheldrake holds underlying morphic resonant fields as the memory or habits of atoms and minds, governing the growth of plants and animals and everybody else. A marvel of a discovery of Sheldrake which haunts modern science and its troubles. It seems to me the louder the dissenting voice, the deeper one should look. And there is the David Bohm, who was persecuted no end, indicates that the implicate, the enfolded order, possesses many subtle hidden variables, all enfolded and unfolded within wholeness, possessing exceedingly high frequencies in the non-local domain. Resonances in an order of 10 to power minus, I think, 126 hertz of Scrum. I will leave a link to him. He talks a lot about Bohm's theories of the simple movement of wholeness, or in Bohm's description, the hollow movement. Bohm says that these resonant fields within the tacit implicate order can be accessed with appropriate attention and practice. Apparently, he didn't say anything new. We just forgot. It appears that we are bereft of the interior psychological formation of the sacred when our own intellect and our imagination are not exercised. Sorry about that. Supermassive resonant field form projections, formations of logos or mind and imagination. The whole world in its unapparent and its apparent field formations is a supermassive projection of new things instantly coming into existence from no prior calculation. Of these internal formations or projection, the principle governing the formation of our own seeing, as it appears, we do not know much at all yet. There are many aspects of the psychology of this work that we would like to talk about in part 5 of the series following on the lost psychology of our imagination. Thank you for watching our videos. We appreciate that.